What's up? What's up, YouTube? What's up, whatever I call people who watch these videos. I always do videos on where I get asked the most questions about, and right now is should I be playing wheel or should I be playing no wheel? Of course, myself, I'm playing a very different deck, but also I play a lot of Lorcana, so I end up playing lots of variants of Sapphire Steel rather than any other deck. um, and just a note on that, Sapphire Steel is sort of not particularly as popular as it has been. But with Lorcana, I've noticed decks have their day in every set. Every deck has a chance to be the deck of that set. The hype for this for Sapphire Steel was probably set 4 when we were able to really be a problem for the Bucky meta, and were fairly good into every other deck. But just as an example, green purple, that deck was very low down on everyone's choices for like the past 2 or 3 sets, I think. And now in this set is the most popular deck in the game right now, I think. Maybe not the most popular, but I would say it's up there. It's very good. It's maybe not popular in Ruby Sapphire, but it's very very good. So just a note, sort of, if anyone ever has doubts of Sapphire Steel, like every set always has a chance to be at the top of the leaderboard. It just matters where what cards they release and stuff like that. And from that rambling, that I just felt like I wanted to get out there. I go into the video topic, which is wheel or no wheel, whole new world or um, no whole new world. So of course, for a while at the end of set 5, I was very much a staunch believer in no wheel. Sky had a very good build that Moyen piloted very very well. I played that a bit. It was still sort of late in the game getting into the no wheel builds because they are a bit different than whole new world. With whole new world, you have the ability to just say everything in my hand can be ink or dumped, and then refresh the hand and play from there. With wheel version, it's every ink count, everything you mulligan, everything you play, everything you do sort of really has to matter. You have to make sure every turn is impactful because there's a chance your card draw is just not going to be particularly good, especially with these newer builds like I've got here from Justice, where there is no cheat or anything like that. So it is just Hiram, and then every turn has to be quite an impactful turn where you play something very big on the board. Um, from a sort of outsider's perspective, I think there are benefits to both. I think we're in such a meta now where everything in the game has almost every card has a benefit, and you'll notice that with the Ruby Sapphire lists where they are very much either tech for a low to the ground meta. They'll have Queen of Hearts and they'll have loads of ways to deal with low to the ground decks, but they will forfeit their mirror matchups. They'll forfeit their later game matchups because they've decided to put cards like Queen of Hearts is no, it doesn't do anything in the mirror, but it will do something to a low to the ground deck that just wants to play things that turn sideways. So there's loads of different trade-offs like that, and I think that sort of that sort of idea doesn't it can still be applied to a whole new world. I think and you notice that with Steel Song, they've got the dock build now that we've seen Candio pilot, where it's very beneficial to play dock. You don't refresh your opponent's hand. You can still go wide and play a lot of characters, but you can still play a whole new world build and benefit from having 7 new cards whenever you want when you sing it. So definitely, Whole New World also gets that application of this card could be beneficial for some matchups and negative for others. And what I've noticed with Whole New World is the reasons why we wouldn't really want to play the Whole New World. Some of those matchups a bit shored off or a bit better. So I'll start with the red matchup. So Ruby Amethyst, I think it's got a lot better because we can wheel them, and as long as we deal with the board or make them B prep, it's fine because they're never going to play a castle on us anymore. They don't really play locations at this particular point of recording. So if you play someone who still has locations in their deck, I'm just saying there's so much location hate out right now. There's so many reasons to not play it. There's Crab, there's Fox, there's just loads of reasons that a location won't stick, and that's the decks that the lists are sort of getting so tight now at this point because um, we've got so many cards that are great to play. It's like, why would you give up space for a Queen's Castle, one that could be a genie? So locations don't really play that much. So as long as we race them and just go over them, Holy World's very, very good in that matchup, I find. They don't really have enough time to react. They'll be playing their 2 quests a turn, and we'll be playing like a big aerial or a Tamatal or a dime or something like that in response. So, you know, I've noticed the whole new world is very, very good there. Into Ruby Sapphire as well, the cards that used to make that matchup so bad was that they could play Quill. So if they knew we were going to wheel them, they could put the Quill down and say, please just wheel me because I'm going to have bigger end threats than you. But if they're going to be doing this slower ramp with sort of Tippo into How Far I Go, or sometimes even Mr. How Far I Go, they're just going to be doing Sail, just 1 card ramp a turn they also have to have in the hand. We can just be wheeling them at that point. We could be playing a Quill down and wheeling them. So we can get a lot of benefits there. As I say, the location hate isn't that big because a lot of people are just bothering to play locations, and I'm seeing Ruby Sapphire at best sort of play maybe one or two hideaways, and that's the only thing that's going to affect your dime. And if you opt to play McDuck Manors, Justin's list hasn't. I'm going to put Justin's list on always because I'm just going to fangirl his list. I thought it was really, really good. I wonder what changes he's made at this point as well. But yeah, you're going to have that dime stick, so you can be at that old sort of style before we had Hideaway and Kuzco released his cards. You could play the dime down, just wheel and keep throwing things on the board and keep just dime tapping them because your opponent would either have to remove it with a CC or a B prep, or just they would have to do that, and then you just play another thing, play another whole new world, just keep going for your deck that way. And you can sort of do that style of gameplay again, which is really really nice, especially if you see that one hideaway inked or something like that. Or you can start questing early with the Smees and then get like quite a bit of lore built up, and then go for that sort of style of play at the end game. So into those red matchups, I think Whole New World is very very good. I think it's got a load of benefits, and that's just basically been how the meta has shaped out. That hasn't been that Whole New World got like a bunch of cards that buffed it. I think it's more that the decks, the way they've adapted, meant that Whole New World has a better style of play right now. And there's always that interesting thing with Blue Steel, the fact that no one really techs for us, no one really practices for us. So when people change their deck, they don't really change thinking about the Blue Steel matchup because they just don't expect to see it. So that's pretty good for us as well. Uh, the negatives, though, I think of Whole New World is you've got all these low to the ground decks right now where wheeling them would be a very negative thing. If you were to wheel a dock deck, and they return with just playing a bunch of daisies, Smees or whatever, you could answer, then wheel again, and then just do the same thing again. So these low to the ground decks that run dock is very, very bad because, look how much work they're doing just getting that discard and draw two action. Think how much more they could do if they had more card draw. They would be getting the benefits of Holy World or having to run it and sing it and play it. So we really can't be doing it against them. Green purple, I tend to think unless you can snap back with a good grab your swords and a Tinkerbell, that's a really bad matchup to be whole new worlding in. And anything else that sort of goes in that bracket that your mind can think of just going wide with these massive two questers that are quite cheap as well. Those matchups, it really negatively is impacted by them. I think it's a really bad idea to run whole new world against those decks, which kind of makes this debate that I'm trying to say a little bit here and there. The only benefit of Holy World is you can just quill it away and play Hiram and draw through that. You could do for alternative draw options with Robin Hood, maybe even try Tyler out if you wanted to. Sail is just good. You might not even need to draw. You might just need to be doing a big thing a turn, like playing a Tinkerbell or a John Silver. So I think maybe you could take the negatives of those dock matchups and everything like that, and play the whole new world variants and still have a good result, and buff up your red matchups, which, let's be honest, if Ruby Sapphire is the most popular deck in the meta, it takes like insane meta percent shares, like 30% sometimes. It might be a good idea to go for those whole new world variants instead. And at the EU LCQ, the player that did the best on Blue Steel was Justin. I mean, of course, is Justin. It's like the best player in Europe, but also he was on this whole new world variant. So there's just loads of good examples of. I think you take those negatives of the dock builds that are quite hard to beat, and take the positives of being able to really beat Ruby a lot better. So I'm leaning a lot more to the whole new world variant, but not gonna just say that and not talk about no wheel because that's probably also the build I'd suggest as well. It's a hard debate. I'll say my opinion at the end of it. I just want to sort of give both a fair shouting before I do. So with no wheel, if anyone's played it, it doesn't really play the same way as Whole New World. It is still Ruby. It is still not Ruby Sapphire. It's still Sapphire still. So we do that thing of we want to get the quill down and we want to ramp up and then we want to dime tap things and finish the game out and use steel to control the board. So it is very similar, and also it's not because we can't just dump the entire hand and then wheel. We have to be very methodical of what we're doing every turn. If we were like twin fire, kill something, discard a card, and then next turn we don't really have any draw coming in or anything impactful, that's a really negative spot to be in. So I think there's lots of benefits to this build. Like I say, not wheeling those dock builds of those green purples, forcing them to play their card draw cards is very, very big. So, and look, we can fit more in there. We can put Calhoun's in there. I don't think there's any debate to say you couldn't put Calhoun in a whole new world, but just the unink count is getting a bit high there at that point, and it's a bit risky. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason to not put Calhoun in there, but this build particularly has Calhoun in it. So we get to play lower to the ground, we get to play a card per turn, we get to fight for the board, and then we get to get an area or a hammer tower down and close the game out. So I think this build, it's sort of the debate I'm trying to say here, is a lot positive into the green purples and the docks and those low to the ground decks that want to just race you because you're never going to refresh their hand. You get to try and match their sort of board presence every turn. Robin Hood's pretty bit impactful in that as well. If you can get him out earlier than the Elsa turn, to start threatening the genie, so he can at least do his job before he's dealt with by an Elsa, or like threatened to be dealt with by an Elsa. So I think there's loads of benefits there. But into the Ruby matchups, I think definitely you can still beat Ruby Amethyst. For sure. Like you just play a strong game like you usually do, anticipate the be prepared. CC won't really do much here because we play Aerial and Tamatoa, like the big CCs won't. Sorry, the 8 cost ones, not the 3 cost ones. You can do it if you were to go 2 drop Quill, Ramp, Hiram, Aerial, Tamatoa, Dime tapping, early by turn 4, 5, 6, or whatever it is. I don't think you're in a really bad spot. I think on the play, definitely you take that. On the draw, if you're able to get a Tinkerbell out early, and start equalizing the board. Find your ways to deal with the genie using Grab Your Swords or Twin Fire or Robin Hood. Definitely, I think that Ruby Amethyst matchup isn't that bad, but it will be harder than if you just had a whole new world where you could just be like 2 drop Quill, 5 drop, and then you start wheeling and just go over them because there's no threat of castle anymore. So what's on the board is what you see is what you get. So they're either going to have to be playing one thing a turn that's not that impactful, and doesn't really win them the race, and then you can just clear it and then keep going towards your win con and maybe force some B preps or whatever. With Ruby Amethyst, with no wheel, you're going to be very methodical. If you miss the Hiram, if you miss the Quill, if you miss the ramp, you don't have that idea of just jump firing the game with a whole new world. Everything you've got to do is be very impactful. Play something very strong every turn. You have to have a very strong mulligan to win those games. And then, but I still think it's very good. I don't think that matchup's the worst, but definitely you'd be winning it a lot better with the whole new world. And then the other matchup is Ruby Sapphire, which I think at this point now with no wheel, especially as we're taking Cheeches out of the list, you've really showed that matchup to be just a lot worse. Please hate me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, you're basically doing what they're doing, but you are using the Quill, but you're going to be doing it a little bit worse, and the end game for them will just be bigger characters and stuff like that. There'll be big dragons, there'll be Sisus, there'll be prepared, there'll be Maui sharks, there'll be just loads of stuff that we just really are going to dislike. So that matchup for sure is just going to be a lot worse, I think, in my opinion. But the point I'm trying to make here, without just going over and over it, is I think the no wheels are very good into these low to the ground decks. I think you can ramp to sort of steal removal a lot better. Tinkerbell as a card they fear even with the genie. You can start using Grab Your Swords. You could add Zeus's in here. I believe Justice did mention about adding Zeus in this list as well. You got Cogsworth to protect the board. They're going to really fear them. But the red matchups, I don't think they particularly would fear too much. If you're on a no wheel blue steel list, I think they would particularly take that. I think a very good Ruby Amethyst player will know particularly what to do in the matchup, and you would just be better at playing Whole New World there because you can just go over your opponent and just roll them, as you can do Whole New World back in the day. Um, but yeah, with the wheel builds, I think again you lean more towards you do a lot better into the Ruby matchups. As I say, because just the way that Ruby Sapphire has been built these days, they haven't got Quill, so they don't really particularly benefit too much from the Whole New World because it's not play Quill benefit from Whole New World for them now. It's you Whole New World, and then they have to scrounge to find their ramp cards and still just play them. And it might not even be the cards they want because they do a lot of scrying now, so they'll look for the top 5 cards or whatever, and then they'll pick the card they want. And if you whole new world them, you refresh them. There's a chance you just give them the cards they want, but there's a chance that you set them back quite a bit as well. So I think it definitely into Ruby Sapphire is a lot better. Ruby Amethyst, I think just by the pace, whenever I've played that matchup or seen that matchup played out, the wheel version is just being able to high roll them again as it was because there's no threat of B prep then castle and weird to have to deal with the castle or race the castle. Genie is still a hard thing to race, but I still think you can deal with it, especially looking at some of these removal cards in here. Grab your swords and fire the cannons, it's going to do it. Tinkerbell, and you can move the ping damage over, and then you can just roll them over. Robin Hood as well. So I think that matchup's shored up. But again, these low to the ground decks, they don't particularly have a huge amount of card draw that use dock and cards like that. Definitely are going to benefit from you playing the whole new world, which you can just quill away. But it's still you're trading the benefit. So I know I'm going to keep over explaining it because I think I'm just going to ruin my explanation. I think play the whole new world build if you are confident into the lower to the ground builds and you can beat them. The green purples, the dock builds, the steel song, stuff like that. And you want a bit more of a benefit and a bit more of a positive into the Ruby matchups because it will make your Ruby matchups a lot easier. and then vice versa. If you prefer playing into the lower the ground builds, and you know, sorry, vice versa. Sorry on that one. If you really are fine playing into the Ruby builds on you should take a no wheel build, I think, and then shore up and benefit and get some positives into your lower to the ground builds if you're struggling with the docks and stuff like that. And I think, in my opinion, that's how it should look because I don't think there's a definitive answer on which one's better. So it's just no wheel, in my opinion, is better for lower to the ground, sort of two quests to go wide decks, dock builds. And Whole New World is just it feels a lot better in the Ruby matchups. As I state at this moment, the meta in Lorcana moves quite fast, so there might be a thing that like one of the big Ruby Sapphire players is like, yeah, let's put Quill back in the list. That could definitely happen. But as it states right now, I think that's my stance on it. And yeah, I think both are very good. Sometimes as well, it might even just come down to which one are you more comfortable on. All of these lists have proven to be fairly good. They did relatively decent into the EU Continentals, which was also quite a tough event. Like, don't underestimate, Justin coming 20th is still very, very good. Frank Carsten and players like that managed to miss out. It was a very tough experience in a best of two format. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Please pick which one you like, I think, and I hope some of this rambling helped.